Welcome, my family. Before we jump in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Please hype me on YouTube. Thanks. I knew something was wrong the night I smelled smoke in our bedroom, though nothing burned. It wasn't the clean, dry smell of a blown-out match. This was heavier, cloying, like sugar left too long on a stove, caramel blackening into something foul. The air felt weighted, the way a kitchen feels after grease has caught fire and been smothered too late. I pushed up from bed, heartbeat quickening. The clock's red digits glowed 12:41 a.m. Daniel slept on, face slack, chest rising and falling. I leaned close, his breath was even, sour with bourbon, nothing strange. But the smell lingered, dragging me out into the hall barefoot. The house ticked with its usual sounds, the water heater, the settling beams. Yet every corner seemed to exhale that same scorched sweetness. I opened cabinets, pressed my palm to outlets, checked the oven. Nothing. When I came back to bed, the smell hadn't faded. It clung to the sheets like invisible smoke. My name is Claire Martin, 33. I teach 7th grade English in Durham, North Carolina. My life has been steady, even dull. I thought I wanted that. Stability over sparks. A house that never changed, a husband who never left, but bruises form before you notice them. I'd been sleeping beside rot without realizing it. The next morning, Daniel left early. Tie crooked, coffee half finished, kiss grazing my cheek without warmth. I watched the garage door hum shut, silence swallowing the house. I don't know why I went to his car. Maybe instinct. The glove box snapped open, spilling manuals and gum wrappers. A folded receipt slid into my lap. The Lantern Room, Friday night. 2 entrees, wine. Handwritten across the top in pink lipstick. Hannah, not Claire. That night the house shifted. The pipes groaned, not random this time, but deliberate, like a throat clearing. The kitchen light flickered as I whispered his name into the empty room. Daniel. The bulb hissed, dimmed, brightened again. When he came home past 11, his smile was too quick. He touched my shoulder, not tender, but dismissive. You've been waiting up? You didn't have to. At midnight, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He flipped it face down, but not before I saw the name. Hannah. The ceiling seemed lower each night, shadows stretching longer across the bedroom. When I turned toward the mirror above the dresser, I froze. Daniel's reflection lay as it should, but another stood behind him, a woman, hair long, wet strands dripping into the dark. Her lips moved against his ear. My breath caught, heat rushing to my face. I blinked and the glass showed only us, but his shirt carried a smell that wasn't his cologne. Roses, sweet, sick, rotting. On the 3rd night, I woke to find ash across the sheets. Black grains streaked my hands when I touched them. Daniel's lips moved in sleep, whispering to someone unseen. I followed the sound into the hall. There, caught on the banister, hung a scarf. Pale silk, faint perfume. It was warm, as if just dropped. I called my sister. Megan came in scrubs, exhaustion etched into her face. She walked the house with me, fingertips trailing the walls. It feels wet, she whispered. She pressed her hand flat against the plaster, then pulled back. Her palm was smeared with soot. Daniel's temper erupted when he overheard. God, Claire, you're pathetic. Spying, dragging your sister into this? You're making it worse. His words cut sharper than shouting. That evening, I saw Hannah fully. She stood in the kitchen, water dripping black from her hair, pooling on the floorboards. Her dress clung like soaked ash, and her eyes, burned out, rims charred, faint wisps of smoke curling upward. She smiled as she pressed her ruined hands against Daniel's chest. He didn't flinch, didn't even turn toward her. You're making this worse, Claire, he said softly. The house sealed itself. Every door slammed. Windows rattled in unison. Smoke poured from the walls, choking my lungs. Hannah's nails reached for me, jagged and cracked, scraping the air with the shriek of glass on stone. The scent of burned flesh rose from her fingers. Daniel stood motionless, watching. As if I were the ghost, I bolted for the bathroom. The window stuck, then gave with a scream of wood. Glass tore into my arms as I forced myself through. Cold air seared my blood-wet skin, mixing warmth and chill until I couldn't tell which burned more. I fell onto the lawn, coughing, body shaking. The night sky distant and uncaring. Behind me, The house fell silent, calm, as if it had never moved at all. I didn't tell Megan everything that night. How could I? Standing in her kitchen, arms bandaged, smoke still burning my throat, the truth felt impossible to speak. I said I tripped, fell through glass, nothing more. But she saw the look in my eyes, and maybe she guessed. "You need to leave him, Claire," she said, her voice firm with the certainty of someone who's seen too many ER admissions from women who didn't leave soon enough. But I couldn't explain. Daniel hadn't been the only danger. The house itself had turned on me. Days blurred. I stayed with Megan, but each night when I closed my eyes, I heard the pipes groaning, the windows rattling, the voice whispering Daniel's name. On the 5th day, I drove past our house. The lawn looked the same. Curtains drawn, car in the drive. A neighbor waved, smiled, unknowing. Nothing looked burned. Nothing looked wrong. But in the upstairs window, for a fraction of a second, I saw her. Wet hair plastered to her skull, smoke rising from the hollows where her eyes should have been. She stood just behind Daniel. His hand lifted the curtain and he smiled, not at me, at her. I drove away shaking, hands slick on the wheel. Megan tried to anchor me. "Come on, Claire. We'll go out. Distract you." But distraction doesn't work when the thing you're running from crawls into your dreams. I'd wake in her spare room choking on rose-scented smoke, sheets damp as though soaked from within. Once I swore I heard Daniel's voice through the vent, whispering Hannah's name over and over. I started writing notes to myself to prove I wasn't unraveling. Each morning I'd write what I smelled, what I saw. On the 7th morning, ash dotted the paper. I went back. I had to. The house loomed like it had been waiting. Inside, silence pressed heavy, as though sound had been swallowed whole. The air reeked of stagnant water and scorched fabric, an impossible marriage of damp and flame. Daniel sat at the kitchen table. He didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't have left," he said calmly. "She doesn't like that." "She?" My voice shook. He tilted his head, eyes flat. "You'll see." Behind him, the faucet dripped black. Hannah emerged slowly this time, as though savoring my horror. Water trailed her body, hissing into smoke wherever it struck the floor. Her burned hands left streaks of soot along the counter. Daniel didn't move. He smiled faintly, as though soot on his shirt was nothing more than flour from baking. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" Hannah's head tilted, jaw opening wider than it should, teeth blackened stubs. A hiss seeped out. Words I couldn't understand, but Daniel nodded as if translating. "She says you don't belong here anymore." The house trembled. Smoke thickened. I backed toward the door, but it slammed, wood splitting as if gripped by unseen hands. Every breath was fire and rot. My eyes watered, vision swimming. Hannah moved closer, nails dragging across the wall, sparks flickering in her wake. Daniel reached for me then, not in rescue, but gently, like leading a child back to bed. His hand was cold, ash-streaked. "You'll make it worse if you fight," he murmured. I shoved him away, stumbled into the hallway, lungs clawing for air. The upstairs mirror caught me. I froze. Not my reflection. Her. She stood in my place, head cocked, smile stretching too wide, smoke seeping from the burned pits of her eyes. Behind her, Daniel stood where he always did, by her side, loyal, waiting. The mirror shattered as I screamed, shards raining like ice. Blood welled across my palms where the glass sliced deep. From the shards on the carpet, her face still grinned up at me. I don't remember how I made it out. Only the night air filling my chest like salvation, the smell of roses still clinging, sweet and scorched. Megan found me on her porch an hour later, barefoot, hands bleeding, clothes streaked with soot. I couldn't speak. She didn't ask. She just cleaned the cuts, wrapped my wrists, stayed beside me. "You're done with him," she said. Not a question. I nodded. But I knew it was a lie because he stayed. Daniel never left that house. He goes to work, they say. They see him at the store. He smiles, waves. Perfectly normal, but at night no one sees. At night she has him. No one but me knows Hannah is there, folded into the walls, dripping onto the floorboards, breathing into his ear. I tell myself I'm free. I sleep in Megan's spare room, windows wide, light on. I remind myself the doors here don't slam. The walls don't bleed smoke. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, I wake choking on roses, burnt sweet, waiting, and I know she's not finished with me. I found the receipt on a Tuesday evening, folded neatly in the pocket of his jeans. A hotel bar in Baltimore. 2 glasses of wine and a room upstairs. The fabric was still warm from the dryer. Soft against my fingers, the ink faint but legible in the yellow glow of the laundry room light. My chest tightened as I smoothed it open, staring at the numbers, the date, the neat line that read Room 306, Harborview Hotel. For a moment, I told myself it was nothing. A mistake, an old receipt that had slipped into his pocket. But the math didn't add up. Daniel had been away on business the weekend before, and here was the paper proof. Not spreadsheets or sales meetings, but wine for 2 and a bed I hadn't slept in. I stuffed the receipt back in his jeans as though hiding it from myself, though the numbers burned behind my eyelids. Upstairs, Emma was humming to her dolls, her little girl voice a balm and a knife all at once. I wanted to be steady for her, but I could feel my pulse thrumming in my ears faster, louder, until it drowned out everything else. That night, when he came home, the lie arrived with him. Daniel walked into the kitchen, suit jacket slung carelessly over his shoulder, smelling faintly of soap and cologne, but beneath it something else, sweeter, sharper. Perfume that wasn't mine. His eyes swept over me with practiced ease, lips curling into a smile I used to melt under. He kissed me, warm and rehearsed, then loosened his tie like a man who'd come home to comfort. Long day. He sighed, dropping his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. I forced a smile, my throat dry. "Where were you?" He chuckled softly, the kind of laugh meant to disarm. "Work dinner, babe. You know how it is." But the perfume clung to him like a second skin, and when his arms wrapped around me, I felt not safety but hollowness, a void between us that no embrace could close. The changes began quietly. At first it was the house, shadows that lingered too long in corners, whispering drafts that carried the faintest suggestion of voices. Doors creaked open though no one touched them. I told myself it was exhaustion, the night shifts at St. Agnes piling up until my eyes betrayed me. But then our neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, caught me on the stoop one Saturday morning. Her voice low and hesitant. "I saw Daniel the other night," she said, glancing nervously at Emma playing on the sidewalk with chalk. "He was with someone, a younger woman, right outside laughing." Her words landed heavier than the receipt had, sinking into me like stones. I smiled tightly, thanked her, pretended I didn't already know. But my insides were unraveling thread by thread. I stopped sleeping. Night stretched long and merciless, filled with small sounds. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the pipes, that grew sinister in the dark. Sometimes I swore I heard muffled voices downstairs. A man's and a woman's, low and urgent. The cadence of intimacy. I would roll over to find Daniel asleep beside me, his breathing steady, his arm draped possessively across my waist. Once, I crept down the stairs, careful to avoid the one step that always groaned. The living room was dim, lit only by the street lamp's pale spill through the blinds. The sofa cushions bore fresh indents as though someone had just risen, and in the air hung the faint, unmistakable trace of lavender, the same lavender that clung to his shirts. I stood frozen, listening to the silence that seemed to press against my eardrums. The hum of the refrigerator grew louder, vibrating through my chest. My hands trembled, but when I turned on the light, the room was empty. Claire was the only one I told. We'd been best friends since nursing school, and she could read me better than anyone. One afternoon in the break room, I confessed in a low rush, words spilling before I could stop them. "He's seeing someone," I whispered, eyes fixed on the cold cup of coffee between my hands. "I don't have proof. Not the kind you could take to court, but I know." Claire's dark eyes softened with concern. "Marissa, you can't stay in that house. Not with Emma. Not with him gaslighting you like this." I wanted to agree, but when I thought about packing, about walking away, something inside me tightened. It wasn't just fear of Daniel. It was the house itself, as though the walls had grown claws. Every time I tried to leave, really leave, not just in fleeting fantasies, the locks jammed, the windows refused to budge. Emma would wake screaming, her voice high and raw. "Daddy brings the woman upstairs," she sobbed once, clutching my arm hard enough to bruise. "She doesn't have eyes." I wanted to tell her it was just a dream. But how could I, when the shadows in our home already breathed like living things? The storm broke 3 weeks later. Rain lashed the windows, wind rattling the panes until they quivered in their frames. Thunder rolled low and endless like the growl of something ancient. I woke to the front door creaking open, the sound threading through my sleep like a needle through skin. Daniel's side of the bed was empty. Heart pounding. I rose, feet cold against the hardwood. I followed the sound of movement down the hall, the flicker of shadows cast by lightning. In the entryway, Daniel stood with a woman. Her face shimmered, blurred, as if caught between channels on a broken television. Her eyes were pools of glass, empty yet staring. Daniel bent toward her, kissed her lips. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. And when her head turned toward me, I saw myself. My own face, pale and hollow, reflected back like a cruel mirror. I grabbed Emma from her bed, her small body limp with sleep, and ran. Rain slapped my skin as I pounded down the street, clutching her against me, hair plastered to my face. I beat my fists against Claire's door until she opened it, eyes wide with shock. Behind us, our house glowed, each window flaring with light like eyes opening in the night. From within, Daniel's voice drifted through the storm, calling my name. Not quite human anymore, stretched thin, warped with something else. Weeks later, I'm still here in Claire's spare room. The walls are bare, the air cleaner, freer. But I don't feel safe. Emma hasn't spoken since that night. She just draws, page after page of our old house, black windows staring out, a woman standing inside. Sometimes late at night, when the rain drums against the roof, I hear Daniel again. Not outside, not in dreams, but right here whispering against the wall, promising he'll find us. Because whatever he brought into that house wasn't just an affair, it was an invitation. And I know it's still waiting, patient, for me to come back. The first week at Claire's felt like breathing after nearly drowning. Her apartment above the bakery smelled of cinnamon and yeast, the air warm with the hum of ovens downstairs. Emma slept curled beside me on the pull-out couch, her small hand fisted in my shirt as though she feared I'd vanish if she let go. But peace never lasts. By the second week, Emma had stopped humming, stopped laughing, stopped being the child I knew. Instead, she drew crude, frantic sketches in black crayon. Our old house, its windows dark, a tall figure in the doorway. Sometimes the figure was Daniel. Sometimes, horrifyingly, it was me. "Sweetheart," I whispered one evening, kneeling by her as she pressed the crayon hard enough to tear the paper. "Why always the house?" She didn't look up. Her voice was barely more than breath. "Because we never left." Claire tried to keep me anchored. "Marissa, you're exhausted," she said one night as we sat with mugs of wine and chipped ceramic. Her eyes, sharp and protective, pinned me in place. "You need sleep, you need therapy, you need—" "Something besides this obsession." "It's not obsession," my voice cracked. "He brought something into that house. It's not just another woman." Emma sees it. I see it. Claire's sigh was heavy, weary. "I love you. But ghosts, demons, whatever you think this is, it's Daniel screwing around." That's the truth. The rest, maybe it's your mind trying to cope. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But then came the sounds. At first, faint. A muffled thump from the walls at night as though someone pressed their ear against the plaster and whispered. Then clearer, a voice I knew too well. Daniel's low and coaxing. "Come home, Marissa. Bring her. She misses me." I froze the first time I heard it, Emma asleep against me. Claire was in her own room, door shut. The words vibrated against the wall behind my head, seeping into the marrow of my bones. By the third week, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The bakery's delivery boy swore he saw me at dawn, standing outside our old house in the rain, my hair plastered dark, my nightgown clinging to my skin. Except I hadn't left Claire's. Emma's drawings grew more frantic, whole stacks of paper filled with figures whose faces blurred like static. When I tried to throw them away, she screamed, her small hands clawing at the trash bag. "It's Mommy," she wailed. "She'll be angry if you hide her." I pulled her close, but her body was rigid, trembling. Sleep slipped further out of reach. When I did drift off, I dreamed of the house. Always the same. I stood in the living room, shadows pressing against me like water. Daniel sat on the sofa with a woman whose face flickered, never still. Sometimes she was beautiful, sometimes grotesque. But always, when she turned, it was my own face I saw. And behind them, Emma stood at the top of the stairs, eyes hollow, her mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. I'd wake drenched in sweat, my throat raw. Sure, I'd been screaming too. Claire started locking the door at night, not against intruders, but against me. "I caught you sleepwalking," she admitted one morning, her expression tight with fear she didn't want to show me. "You were trying to open the front door. Emma was behind you. I had to shake you both awake." Her words left me cold. I didn't remember. But Emma's drawings that day showed the two of us hand in hand standing outside the house again. The breaking point came on a Thursday. Rain again. Always rain. The bakery below rattled with the storm shutters, the air heavy with the smell of yeast and sugar. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching furiously, her crayon snapping in her grip. I bent to pick up the broken piece and froze. On the page, she'd drawn, not the house, but Claire's apartment. The sofa, the table, the window, and in the corner, a dark shape with no face. "Emma," I whispered. Why this?" Her eyes lifted wide and too old. "Because it followed us." That night, the whispering grew unbearable, not just from the wall, but from every surface, the floorboards, the ceiling, even the glass of the window pane. Daniel's voice overlapping with another higher, keening. I pressed my hands to my ears, rocking while Emma sat silent on the sofa, staring at the door. When Claire burst in, frantic, she found me crouched on the floor, whispering back, "I have to go," I said. "If I don't, it'll come here. It wants me." She grabbed my shoulders hard. "Marissa, listen to yourself. You're scaring Emma." But Emma only nodded solemn. "She's right. Daddy says Mommy has to come back." I don't remember leaving Claire's. One moment I was on the sofa. The next I stood in the rain outside our old house, Emma's hand clutching mine. The windows glowed faintly, warm and golden, like eyes half shut in contentment. The door opened before I touched it. Daniel stood there, smiling the same smile he wore on our wedding day. Behind him, shadows writhed, thick as smoke. "Welcome home," he said. Emma's hand slipped from mine. She walked past me into the house, her small form swallowed by the darkness. I tried to follow, but something held me back. The threshold felt like a wall of water pressing against my chest. Inside, Daniel reached for Emma, his hand gentle on her hair. But the woman beside him, the flickering-faced one, turned and smiled. "My smile, my eyes, stay," she whispered. "There's no hollow between us now." I don't know how long I stood in the rain screaming Emma's name, pounding against an invisible barrier while the house breathed around me. When I woke, I was back in Claire's spare room. My clothes soaked, mud streaked across the floor. Claire wouldn't meet my eyes. Emma wasn't there. It's been 3 days. The police say Daniel moved away, that the house is empty, that no one saw me outside in the rain. They treat me like a grieving wife unraveling under pressure, nodding and writing notes in their little books. But at night, when I close my eyes, I hear Emma's voice. Not frightened, not crying, laughing with Daniel. And sometimes in the reflection of the darkened window, I see her beside him. The woman with my face. She smiles at me, lips pale and stretched. "You were right," she whispers. "There was never an affair, only us. Only the hollow. Now I sit here writing this, my hands trembling. Claire has left for work and I am alone in her apartment. The walls creak, the air heavy, and from just beyond the plaster, Daniel calls my name. "Come home, Marissa. She's waiting." I know I shouldn't. I know if I go back, there will be no coming out again. But the hollow between us is widening, and I'm not sure I can resist it much longer. I found the lipstick stain on his shirt the night the furnace groaned like a dying animal. It was faint, almost the color of dried blood, pressed into the pale cotton of his work shirt just above the collarbone, a smudge so out of place it felt obscene. I held the fabric close, testing the shade against memory. Not mine, not any tube of lipstick I owned. My hands lingered on it too long, the fabric crinkling in my fists, while the furnace below rattled the way it sometimes did in winter storms. Except it was September. Clear skies, cool night air. No reason for the pipes to growl. When Mark came upstairs, I had the shirt in my lap. He laughed before I spoke, a laugh meant to swat suspicion away like a mosquito. He leaned down, kissed me, lips brushing mine with practiced ease, but the warmth felt borrowed, foreign. I let him. I even forced a smile. as if by keeping the balance of our rituals I could erase what I'd seen. That night, lying awake, I listened. The furnace rattled again, only this time the sound threaded upward into the walls, into the floorboards beneath our bed. A low vibration that carried with it something almost like words. The next morning the doorbell rang, and there stood Elaine Turner, gray hair pinned back, casserole dish balanced in her thin hands. A widow for 10 years now, Elaine was the kind of neighbor who never missed what passed by her window. Her eyes were sharp, blue like wet glass, always seeming to see more than anyone had spoken aloud. I invited her in, balancing the weight of the dish, already knowing what she had come to say. She looked around our kitchen, gaze lingering on the scuffed linoleum, the darkened corners, as if measuring how long the house itself had been listening. "I saw him," she said finally. "Mark, out near the highway by the bar, with a young woman." Her words settled with the same certainty as weather rolling in. I nodded, lips pressed tight, casserole heavy in my hands. She tilted her head, studying me with that strange patience of hers, as though waiting to see if I would acknowledge something older than her words. Behind us, the refrigerator hummed, louder than usual. The wall at my back seemed to pulse, faint but insistent, like it had been holding its breath until Elaine spoke. I went on with my days, though the shape of them grew thinner. At the dental clinic, I scrubbed trays, prepared rooms, smiled for patients, all while my hands trembled over small metal tools. At home, I cleaned until my skin cracked, cooked meals neither of us touched. But the rhythm no longer protected me. The locks began to fight back. The first time I chalked it up to rust. I pushed the deadbolt, but my wrist stiffened, hand gone cold as if it didn't belong to me. The windows refused too, frames swelling against my palms though the weather was dry. Each attempt to leave ended with the house insisting otherwise. Murphy noticed before I admitted it. He barked at shadows, growled at the hallway corners, stiffened when I touched the cellar door. At night, he wouldn't step into the kitchen. His eyes followed something invisible along the baseboards, hackles rising, body taut as if the air itself were hunting him. And still Mark came and went, smiling, showering, eating little. His routine carried on, but when I looked at him, I saw only the lipstick stain, the laugh, the borrowed kiss. The cellar door had always creaked, but lately it breathed. Wood expanding, contracting like lungs. Sometimes, late at night, I would stand in the hallway and hear his voice drift up from the dark below. Mark's voice, smooth and familiar, calling my name. The sound pulled me down the first time. I opened the door, the hinges moaning like something pained, and stared into the black throat of the stairs. The air was damp, smelling of iron, wet earth, something faintly sweet beneath it. I didn't move. The darkness pulled too thick at the base, clinging like oil. The voice rose again, my name stretched into something wrong, vowels held too long. I shut the door, fast. Days blurred. My sister Jenna called, urging me to leave, pack a bag, come stay at her apartment across town. "Don't wait for him to admit it," she said. "Don't wait for proof. Just go, I've tried," I whispered. "The locks." She didn't understand. How could she? I didn't tell her that my own wrist had frozen on the knob, that my breath had hitched like someone else's lungs were filling mine. I didn't tell her how the house exhaled against me when I pressed the window. I lied, told her I'd come soon. The second time I opened the cellar door, I took a step down. Just one. The wood bent under my weight with a sound that wasn't creak but crack, sharp like ribs splintering. I froze. The air rose, warm and metallic, coating my tongue with iron. The voice below whispered again, but it wasn't Mark's anymore. It was close, too close, brushing my ear, though the stairs below were still swallowed in dark. I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled. Murphy howled from the other room, tail tucked, body trembling. Elaine came again one evening, no casserole this time. Just her standing at the threshold, eyes sharp as ever, hair caught by the wind. "You shouldn't stay here," she said. Her voice was lower now, more certain. Not advice, but warning. I opened my mouth, but the air between us thickened, pressing against my chest. Behind me, I swore I heard the cellar breathe. Elaine's gaze shifted past me, into the house, into its dim corners, and she nodded once, as if confirming something she'd long suspected. When she left, the house groaned deep in its beams, a sound of displeasure. Nights no longer felt like sleep. I drifted on the edge of dreams where the walls pulsed and the vents hummed faintly with laughter. Each morning I woke with the taste of damp soil in my mouth, My body grew weaker as though every hour inside stripped me down. Still, I stayed. Or rather, I couldn't leave. Nights blurred together, stitched by the hum in the walls and the weight in the air. I stopped marking time. The house carried it for me hour by hour, with each groan of its beams and each pulse in the plaster. Mark noticed nothing or pretended not to. He left early, returned late, showered, shaved, slipped into bed beside me, smelling faintly of perfume not my own. His hand brushed my arm once, just once, before he rolled away, as though even touch was something loaned. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls expand and contract in rhythm with my breath. Or maybe my breath was falling into rhythm with them. The locks grew worse. One evening I tried again, coaxed Murphy to the door, bag half packed in the hallway. My hand reached for the deadbolt. It should have been simple. Metal sliding, click of release. But as I turned, my wrist twisted sharp, bone grinding. My own hand stiffened, refusing to move. Pressure coiled up my arm, a grip from inside my skin. I gasped, pulled back. The lock remained sealed, handle cold against my palm. Murphy whined, pawing the wood, nails scratching frantic. His body shivered against my leg. I didn't try again. Jenna's calls came more often. "Just leave," she said. "Break a window. Kick the damn door down if you have to." "I will," I told her. My voice sounded far away, like someone else was saying it. After I hung up, the kitchen lights flickered. The bulb hissed, swelling bright before dimming, shadows stretching along the ceiling like ink. The house had heard. Elaine stopped me one afternoon as I stepped outside to fetch the mail. She was on her porch, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me with an intensity that pinned me in place. "You hear it, don't you?" she asked. The words froze me. "Hear what?" Her gaze cut to the cellar windows, those narrow slits barely above the ground, dark glass, impossible to see through. "It doesn't stop. Not once it begins." I opened my mouth, but my throat closed. The wind carried her words into me like seeds. She shook her head slowly. "Don't follow it down," Murphy barked from inside, sharp and panicked. I turned back to the house, and when I looked again, Elaine was already at her door, gone. That night the voice was clearer. Not just my name. Words, sentences, stitched together in Mark's tone, promises he hadn't spoken in years. "Lauren, it's only us. Only ever us. Come to me." The cellar door rattled against its frame. The air around it swelled, pressing outward. I stood in the hall, feet rooted to the floor, ears straining against the dark. Murphy growled low, teeth bared, but he didn't move closer. His body shivered, tail tucked so tight it nearly vanished. The door whispered against its hinges, wood bending, and I went to it. The stairs bent beneath me like a body breaking. Each step groaned louder, sharper, splintering wood. The smell rose thick, iron, wet earth, something copper sweet. My throat clenched around it. The darkness below wasn't absence of light, but presence of something heavier, pressing upward like oil. The voice rose too, Mark's words curling around me. "You know me. You know I'm yours." I reached the bottom. My shoes sank slightly, ground damp, slick beneath them. The air pressed against my skin, clammy, close. The walls around me throbbed faintly, wood and stone pulsing like flesh. "Lauren," the voice whispered. Closer now, inches from my ear, a hand brushed my shoulder. Too long-fingered, cold, wet, slick with something that clung when I pulled away. I staggered back, heart hammering, and the cellar answered. The beams overhead groaned, dust sifting down. The stairs behind me curved, warped, stretching taller than they had before. The house was moving. I ran. My hands clawed the air, scrabbling up the warped steps. My foot slipped, hitting slick wood, ribs of the staircase cracking beneath my weight. The door loomed above, smaller now, like a mouth closing. I reached, fingers scraping the frame, and something behind me laughed. Not Mark's laugh. Higher, layered, threading with whispers. I shoved the door. It wouldn't budge. My palm pressed flat, muscles locking as though the wood pressed back. I screamed, not words, just sound, raw and tearing from my throat. My shoulder slammed once, twice, until the frame gave. The door burst open, spilling me into the hallway. Murphy barked, lunging, teeth snapping at the dark that seemed to seep through after me. I slammed the door shut, chest heaving, lungs burning. Behind it, the cellar groaned, beams shifting in disappointment. I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room floor, knees pulled tight, Murphy curled against me. The air felt different now, charged, humming faintly. Every corner of the house seemed to lean closer, listening. When dawn came, the light through the blinds looked wrong, yellowed, thick, like old paper. I knew then the house hadn't let me go. I tried once more to leave. Bag in hand, Murphy leashed, I pressed the lock. My wrist locked again, bone stiffening, pain burning sharp through my arm. I forced harder, nails biting into my own skin. The metal turned warm beneath my grip, almost hot. Then the knob shifted on its own. Slowly, deliberately, turning back into place, the house was choosing for me. I don't know how much time passed. The days bled together. Elaine's curtains stayed closed. Jenna's calls went unanswered. Nights filled with whispers, layered now. Not just Mark, but others. Voices I didn't know, weaving together like threads pulled too tight. They seeped through the vents, the floorboards, the walls. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they wept. Sometimes they murmured secrets I'd never told anyone. Phrases I'd whispered years ago. Words I thought forgotten. The house knew me. The final night came without warning. The furnace growled again, deeper than before, shaking the floor beneath my feet. The walls trembled, pulsed harder, faster, their rhythm no longer mine. The cellar door flew open. Not creaked, not groaned, flew, slamming against the wall so hard the frame split. The dark below churned, heavy and alive, spilling whispers upward in a tide. Murphy bolted, leash snapping from my hand. He fled down the hall, nails skittering, body vanishing into the dark. His bark echoed once, cut off sharp. The voice rose from below, not Mark's, not anyone's, but all of them at once. Come, I couldn't stop myself. Feet moved, body descending as though strings had been tied inside me. Each step split louder, wood snapping like bone. The air wrapped around me, thick and sweet, cloying with perfume. Not mine, hers, whoever she was. The younger woman. The scent filled my lungs, choking, drowning. A hand gripped mine, cold, slick, and pulled me deeper. I don't remember how I escaped. Only the tearing sound of wood behind me, the slam of the door, the night air cutting my throat as I stumbled outside. The house shuddered, beams rattling like it was disappointed I had slipped through. Now I lie in Jenna's guest room, weeks away from Maple Hollow Road. The world tells me I'm free. But at night, when the vents hum faintly, I wake to the perfume, heavy, chemical sweet. It fills my lungs, suffocating, clinging, and then I realize it isn't drifting in, it's coming out. I first suspected his lies the night the phone rang at 2 a.m., and he slipped from the bed without meeting my eyes. His movement was quick, practiced, as though he'd done it before. The receiver glowed in the dark hall, and I caught the curve of his shoulders hunched, the low murmur of his voice. Lucas never whispered to me like that. When he returned, he carried with him a silence that settled into the mattress, into the room, into the house. I felt it spread like fog. The air tasted stale. I turned my head toward him, searching his face, in the dark. But he closed his eyes too quickly, feigning sleep. From that night forward, the house itself seemed to notice. The floorboards exhaled sighs, long and measured, beneath feet that weren't ours. The walls groaned as though bending closer. Shadows clung to corners even when I switched on every lamp. The stillness of Meadowlark Drive outside, that perfect suburban hush, only amplified the wrongness humming inside. Perfume arrived next. Sweet and thick. An unfamiliar floral note that hung in the hallway near the mirror. I would pass through, at odd hours before work after grading essays late, and the scent would slip into my nose, sharp as intrusion. It didn't fade the way my own lavender lotion did. It lingered, cloying, as though the walls themselves had absorbed it. I began pressing my ear against the plaster, not even sure why, my pulse thudding in my throat. Once, downstairs near the kitchen, I heard it. Breathing. Not imagined, not the hum of a fridge or the wind outside. Breathing, shallow, wet. Each inhale rattled like lungs thick with fluid, each exhale long and deliberate, waiting. I staggered back so quickly my heel caught the rug. I wanted to flee, but the silence pulled me in. Every knock from the pipes, every draft curling down the stairwell felt intentional. The house was listening. It wanted me close. Lucas dismissed everything. "Old houses creak, Evelyn," he said, voice soft, smile steady. But when I caught the faintest smear of lipstick on the collar of his shirt, Dark, not my shade. His smile cracked for a second. Then the house groaned above us and the ceiling light flickered and he looked away too fast. Days bled into each other. The more I avoided the walls, the more insistent they became. At night, lying in bed, while Lucas scrolled his phone with his back turned, I could hear it in the plaster behind my headboard. A patient rhythm, like something enormous pressed ear to ear with me through only an inch of drywall. Breathing in, breathing out, waiting. The words appeared in the bathroom mirror 2 weeks later. Steam clung to the glass though the water had run cold, and across the blurred surface came a phrase, forming stroke by stroke as though carved from the inside. She's here too. I wiped furiously, my skin prickling, but the words stayed long enough for Lucas to walk in. He glanced once, muttered about condensation patterns, and walked back out. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. I stopped trying to confront him. Instead, I listened to the house. Its voice sharpened as I leaned closer, groans, knocks, air wheezing through pipes like whispers. The perfume thickened. Some nights I swore it coated my pillow, my skin. Storms always roused it. The first major one came on a Thursday. Thunder staggering the windows, rain clawing against the siding. The power snapped and the house sighed in relief as if freed. I lit a candle, the flames swaying in drafts that bent around me, guiding me down the stairs. The basement door stood ajar. The smell hit first. Perfume mingled with damp concrete, a suffocating sweetness layered over rot. I gripped the candle tighter and stepped down, each creak of the wooden stairs echoing as though repeated by something below. At the bottom, Lucas stood frozen. He wasn't alone. On the far wall stretched a silhouette, a woman's shape in perfect detail, shoulders, hair, the tilt of her head. Yet beside him the air was empty. Her outline rippled against the cinder block as if projected from within the wall itself. Lucas whispered without turning, "Don't look." But I did. Hairline fractures split across the plaster, crawling outward like veins. From those veins seeped blackness thick as oil, pulsing, threading together into form. A body peeling itself loose from stone, dragging her smile with it. The candle guttered. The room darkened, swallowing breath. I bolted, stumbling up the stairs, shoulder striking the wall so hard I felt bone bruise. Behind me, the sound of plaster tearing open filled the dark like paper ripping. Something dragged itself free. Rain met me at the door, cold and relentless. Mud swallowed my feet as I screamed down the street, the storm lashing my skin raw. Something invisible clawed at me, pulling me backward. I tore myself forward, driven by lightning's crack. In that flare of light, whatever had reached for me recoiled, retreating to shadow. I didn't stop until my lungs seared and my throat was bloodied with screams. I never returned. I moved out within 48 hours. The things I left behind, furniture, clothes, dishes, felt irrelevant compared to the chance of escaping the house's breath. My body moved in panic, packing a suitcase with only what I could carry, shutting drawers with trembling hands. Lucas barely spoke, his face drained, eyes always fixed on corners as though expecting the walls to answer back. He didn't ask me to stay. I didn't look back when I pulled away in the car. The one-room apartment above the laundromat felt sterile, mechanical. The constant hum of machines downstairs was a comfort, a steady drone that left no space for silence. I clung to that noise like a lifeline. The scent of detergent soaked into the air, clashing with the faint tang of bleach. My new walls were thin and tired, stained with old watermarks, but they didn't breathe, at least not at first. Nights were hardest. The first week I fell asleep to the rhythmic churn of the washers below, convincing myself the worst was finished. The laundromat's neon sign bled red light through my blinds, painting the room in uneasy glow. I told myself I could rebuild here, a new pattern, a new life. But silence crept in when the machines clicked off at 2 a.m. That was when I began to notice the other sounds. A faint exhale, barely audible, so soft I thought I'd dreamed. The next night it was louder. A rasp wet at the edges like lungs heavy with fluid. I sat upright in bed, sheets tangled around my legs holding my breath. The sound persisted. Not outside, not upstairs. Inside the wall. I pressed my ear against the plaster, Inhale, exhale, measured, patient, the same cadence that had haunted me on Meadowlark Drive. The smell followed soon after. It slipped beneath the door, curled around the baseboards, and clung to my clothes. The perfume, sickly sweet gardenia-like, rotting at its edges. I showered, scrubbed, opened the windows, but it returned each night as if seeping from my skin. I stopped eating properly. Each meal tasted faintly of flowers, the phantom flavor coating my tongue. My students noticed my distraction. I graded their essays in silence, red pen moving mechanically while my thoughts circled the apartment. I heard the building groan with every shift of weather, and each creak seemed deliberate. One afternoon, Janet from Meadowlark called. I hadn't given her my new number, but she found me. "I don't know what's happening in your old place," she said, her voice trembling. "But last night the windows glowed, like firelight. And I swear I heard a woman laughing. Are you safe?" I hung up before answering. Sleep fractured into shallow bursts. Sometimes I woke to find words faintly traced across the condensation of my single narrow window. "She's here too." I wiped furiously, but the letters stayed long enough for dawn to reveal them again. I tried ignoring it. I buried myself in routine, wake, teach, grade, collapse. But the house, no, not the house anymore. The thing tightened its grip. One night, the humming below ceased earlier than usual. I sat alone in the red neon glow, trying to read when the air thickened. The perfume grew cloying. I felt it enter my lungs with each breath, choking me. The wall at my back pulsed once, faint as a heartbeat. Then again, I pressed my palm against it. The plaster was warm, my body locked. Behind the thin wall, the breathing deepened, rasping, urgent. Nails scraped along the interior surface, dragging slowly, deliberately. A voice followed. Not words, but the guttural shape of them, pressing through like a whisper forced through stone. I stumbled backward, knocking the lamp over, its light swinging across the room. In the shifting shadows, for a heartbeat, I saw her, half-formed, pressed against the wall as though straining to emerge. Her face blurred, but her smile was clear. The plaster cracked, veins of darkness spiderwebbing across its surface. The same splitting I'd seen in the basement. My chest seized, memories colliding with the present. The storm, the tearing sound, Lucas's whispered plea. "Don't look." But I couldn't look away. The cracks spread. The smell grew unbearable, heavy as rot masked in flowers. I bolted for the door, but the knob seared cold against my hand. I yanked it, stumbled into the stairwell, sprinted down into the laundromat. Machines stood silent, rows of open mouths waiting. The smell followed me, filling the tiled room, pressing down from every angle. I ran into the street barefoot, neon bleeding across wet pavement. My throat ripped open with screams that vanished into the night traffic. People stared. Some called after me, but none of them smelled the perfume. None of them heard the breathing. Back in my apartment, I stuffed towels against the walls, lit candles, tried to drown the silence with the static of a broken radio. It didn't matter. The thing seeped through anyway. Lucas stopped answering my calls. When I drove past Meadowlark, the windows were black, the house sagging as if hollowed out. Yet the presence was not gone. It was here with me. The perfume coats everything now. It clings to my hair, my clothes, my sheets. Sometimes I wake choking on it, my lungs burning as though filled with flowers ground to dust. I see her shadow flicker across the blinds, even when the neon hums steady. Last night, I pressed my ear to the wall again, trembling. The breathing was louder than ever. Not shallow now, not patient, hungry. And underneath it, a second rhythm joined, fainter, uneven, my own. The walls and I breathed together, in sync until I tore myself away. I don't know how long I can stay here. The laundromat hum can't protect me forever. The thing has no house anymore. It doesn't need one, it has me. Every night when silence falls, it listens and it waits. The perfume is stronger tonight. The walls are warmer. If I close my eyes, I can almost feel her lips at my ear. The thing isn't gone. It's still listening. I should have left him years ago. That thought repeats like a bruise under my ribs, swelling whenever the lights flicker, whenever the air presses down cold against our bed, whenever I hear whispers that don't belong to either of us. My name is Naomi Fletcher. I'm 32, a paralegal in Portland, Maine. People at Evans & Stroud think of me as steady, reliable, the one who remembers to refill the coffee, who keeps aspirin and tissues in her drawer. I let them think that. Stability is a mask one I wear so no one sees the cracks, because at home in the house on Ashbury Lane, the cracks never stop widening. It wasn't always like this. There was a time I thought I'd found light. Ethan Vance, my husband, was magnetic in ways I couldn't explain. When he paid attention to you, it felt like the whole room tilted toward that beam. His attention was the first reliable light I'd had in years, and I mistook it for safety. But attention dims. His turned elsewhere, and I learned silence can cut sharper than shouting. He'd come home late, phone face down on the counter, jacket carrying smells I didn't own. Sweet floral, musky vanilla, foreign. One night I reached into his coat pocket, half praying I'd find nothing, half dreading I'd find everything. My fingers closed around a hotel key card with someone else's lipstick stain. He denied it, smooth as glass. He laughed, kissed my forehead, called me paranoid, and I wanted to believe him. But that night, when I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed into my hands, the mirror fogged, though no shower ran, and in the condensation words appeared, thin strokes dragging across glass by an unseen finger. He lies. I didn't scream. I just stared, my skin prickling with sweat. I wiped the words away with trembling hands, but the letters lingered faintly in the steam, as if etched into the glass itself. That was the first time the house chose sides. After that, nothing felt steady. The silence of the house thickened until it pressed against me like water. The hum of the old furnace became a constant throat-deep vibration that I felt more than heard. Sometimes beneath that vibration, another sound threaded through. A woman sobbing. Metallic, muffled, as if caught in the pipes. I tried to carry on. At work, Harper Reed, the closest thing I had to a friend, caught me staring at a wall of case files without moving. "Naomi," she said, her voice sharper than usual. "You've read the same page 4 times. What the hell is happening to you?" I muttered excuses, headaches, deadlines. But she leaned closer, her perfume sharp and citrus. "No," she said. "I've seen this look before. You're unraveling." My brother Lucas was even blunter. One night after I let his calls go to voicemail, he showed up outside the Ashbury Lane house, leaning against his dented Subaru with his arms folded tight. "Naomi, that place is eating you alive. Get out now. Don't wait for him to get bored of you. Don't wait until you're nothing but bones rattling in the walls." I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to. But the house held me, and when I walked its halls alone, it was as if the air shifted, listening. The light from the street lamp bent strange through the linen closet door, stretching across the hallway carpet into a shape that wasn't a chair, wasn't a coat, just a dense, dark mass that breathed when I wasn't looking straight at it. Sometimes I caught myself pressing my palm against the wall, not sure why. The wallpaper was cold, but beneath it, vibrations like a voice speaking too low for words. The worst came one night in late November. A nor'easter was battering the coast, wind slamming against the siding, trees clawing at the windows. Ethan stumbled in around midnight, drunk, tie loose, eyes bloodshot. He dropped his keys, cursed, then muttered a woman's name, one I didn't recognize, into the shadows of our bedroom. I stood frozen at the dresser as he lurched toward me. But before he could reach the bed, the door swung shut with a violence that rattled the frame. The lock clicked by itself. Ethan pounded his fists against the wood. "Naomi, open the goddamn door." His voice was ragged, slurred. I backed away, shaking, watching the ceiling as shadows thickened, bleeding outward like spilled ink, swallowing the corners of the room. And then came the sound. Not his fists, not the storm outside. Something lower, wet. A growl pressed directly against the wood between us. Ethan stopped pounding. For a second, silence. Then a single thud, his shoulder slamming the door before his curses returned, louder, desperate. I didn't wait. I ran barefoot down the stairs through the narrow hall and flung the front door open. Cold air slapped me, rain soaking my nightgown instantly. I bolted into the street, the pavement slick, gravel biting my feet. Behind me, windows slammed shut one after the other, each slam louder, closer, like a giant hand clapping down on the house's secrets. And the footsteps, dear God, the footsteps. They followed, heavy, dragging, as if bare feet slapped wet against wood, then stone, then asphalt. I didn't dare look back. Neighbors later said they saw me screaming in the middle of Ashbury Lane, hair plastered to my face, arms flailing. But they saw no one behind me. They swore no man chased me, no shadows spilled after me, just me, alone. I've been at Lucas's place ever since, curled on his sagging couch, staring at the cracked ceiling. He tries to make me laugh, distract me with TV, beer, late-night diner food. I nod, smile thinly, but sleep won't come. Because every night, precisely at 3:15, my phone buzzes. The screen lights with Ethan's name. I've blocked him. I've thrown one phone into the dumpster behind Lucas's building, bought another. Still, it rings. Always at the same time. Always his name, and sometimes, when exhaustion drives me to answer, it isn't Ethan's voice I hear, it's hers, and she's still in the house. I tried not to answer the calls. I really did. The first week at Lucas's, I let them buzz out, the vibration rattling across the end table until I stuffed the phone under a pillow. But the sound still leaked into my bones, the faint electric hum of his name glowing on the screen. By the second week, curiosity curdled into desperation. I wanted to hear Ethan. I wanted to hear him deny everything, promise me I was crazy, something, anything that explained what had happened in that house. So one night, hands trembling, I slid my thumb across the glass. "Naomi?" His voice, slurred, low. Relief flooded me so hard I almost dropped the phone. But then I heard it, a second voice, faint under his. A woman's sob, metallic, like the sound was passing through copper pipes. The line cut, dead silence. Then the dial tone. I didn't sleep after that. Days blurred. Lucas tried to drag me out of the apartment. Coffee shops, the old port, even a day trip to Freeport. But Portland in winter felt hushed, muted, the snow swallowing sound the way the Ashbury house used to. I'd sit with a latte cooling in my hands and see the outline of fog on glass, words forming where none should. Harper called me once during lunch break at the firm. "Naomi, you dropped off the map. I covered 2 of your filings this week. If you're sick, fine. But if you're hiding, I can't help you if you won't talk," I almost told her. Almost. But how do you explain a house that writes lies in mirrors? A house that slams doors against your husband? Instead, I muttered, "Thanks, Harper. I just need time." "You don't have time," she snapped. "You sound hollow." She hung up before I could reply. Nights dragged longer. The calls never stopped. 3:15 like clockwork. I stopped blocking numbers, stopped replacing phones. It didn't matter. Ethan's name found me, glowing like a wound on the screen. One night, Lucas fell asleep on the recliner, the TV muttering reruns. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank window. Outside, the street lamp flickered, haloed by drifting snow. The phone buzzed. I answered, "Naomi." Ethan's voice barely audible, and then closer, sharper, the other voice. A woman's whisper so near it tickled my ear through the speaker. "Come back." I dropped the phone. It clattered to the hardwood, but the whisper kept spilling out, tinny and broken. I kicked it under the couch, pressing my palms against my ears. Still, the sound throbbed inside my skull. When I woke hours later, the phone lay silent at my feet, screen black. But my ears rang, and my pillow was damp with tears I didn't remember crying. I told Lucas the next morning. He froze, toast halfway to his mouth. "Naomi, you're not going back there." "Don't even think it. I'm not," I said, too fast. He didn't believe me. Neither did I, because by then the pull had started. The house didn't just haunt me. It beckoned. I'd dream of its stairwell, the wood groaning under unseen steps. I'd wake with the taste of dust in my mouth, the smell of oil and rust in my nose, as if I'd been in the basement again. On the 10th night away, I caved. I waited until Lucas left for his shift at the brewery, then dressed in layers, shoved my feet into boots, and walked the mile back to Ashbury Lane. The street was quiet, snow piled against curbs. The house loomed at the end, dark windows watching. My key slid into the lock too easily. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the air was colder than the street. Not draft cold, thick cold, pressing against my skin like damp stone. The silence was immense, drinking the sound of my breath. I should have turned back, but I climbed the stairs. In the bathroom, the mirror waited. I stared at my pale reflection until my breath fogged the glass. For a moment, nothing. Then slowly, as if a fingertip dragged from the other side, the letters formed again. "He lies." This time, I whispered back, voice breaking, "I know." The house seemed to exhale. From the hallway, a creak, footsteps, not Ethan's tread, softer, bare. They stopped outside the door. I pressed my back against the wall, heart hammering. The knob turned once, twice, then silence. When I finally cracked the door, no one stood there. but down the hall the linen closet gaped open. Inside, the dark wasn't shadow. It was mass breathing. I bolted down the stairs, through the front door, into the cold night. I didn't stop running until I reached Congress Street, lungs burning. Lucas found me hours later in a diner, hands wrapped around cold coffee. He didn't yell. He just looked at me with something worse than anger, fear. "Naomi," he said quietly, "if you go back there again, you won't come back out?" I wanted to promise him I wouldn't, but promises mean nothing when a house decides it owns you. The calls kept coming, louder, clearer. By now the voice wasn't Ethan's at all. It was hers. Higher-pitched, cracked, whispering words I couldn't always understand. Sometimes laughter, sometimes sobs, sometimes my own name stretched into something unrecognizable. The last night I answered again. "Naomi." Her voice, not his, warped, gurgling like breath forced through water. "He lies. He's still here." The line hissed, then cut. I threw the phone, but the buzzing kept going, vibrating through the floor, through my bones. I pressed my hands over my ears. Still I heard her. Now I don't sleep at all. Lucas tries, but he can't protect me from the glow of the screen or the whispers in the dark. The house wants me back. And some nights, when the phone lights at 3:15 and the voice breathes against my ear, I want to go because she's still in the house, and maybe now so is he. I found out about his affair on a rainy Thursday night, scrolling through his phone while he showered. It wasn't even hidden well. Just a casual "I miss you" from a number I didn't recognize. My thumb hovered above the glowing screen, the steam of the shower rolling under the bathroom door, the sound of water pelting tile like static filling my ears. My stomach turned, not with shock, but with something quieter. A hollow confirmation of a truth I'd already known in some wordless, bone-deep way. My name is Julia Hart, 32, and for the last 8 years I've been married to a man named Adolf. I teach English at Deering High School in Portland, Maine, a job I once loved because it gave me stories, voices, fragments of lives to carry home. But that Thursday night, standing barefoot on the cold hardwood floor of our bedroom, my own story felt like it had slipped into someone else's hands. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, my reflection smudging across it in the half-dark. His phone felt heavier than it should have, the glass almost hot against my palm, as though it knew it had betrayed him. I could hear him humming in the shower, off-key, careless. And in that moment I hated the way he sounded, so comfortable, so unburdened. At first I told myself I would confront him the next morning, that I would wait for the storm to pass, for the windows to stop rattling like restless teeth, for my own pulse to even out. But something about the night, the low thunder rolling from the coast, the smell of wet earth slipping in through the cracked window, made me stay quiet. I wanted to watch, to see the truth in its rawest form. That was when I began to notice what I'd never let myself see before. His late-night calls disguised as work emergencies. The faint trace of lipstick on his shirt collar, nothing dramatic, just a ghostly smear, almost like blood under bad light. The hollow way he touched me, not with want but with rote memory, the way someone brushes their teeth without thought. And the house. The house seemed to change after that night. It was built in the 1920s, a modest colonial with white siding and narrow windows, the kind of house you drive past without noticing. But suddenly, shadows thickened in corners that used to feel safe. The pipes groaned louder, their moans echoing through the walls like distant voices. The locked guest room door rattled faintly, though no draft reached it. I had lived here 6 years and never once thought about that room. Now I couldn't stop hearing it breathe. My best friend Claire insisted it was stress. She sat with me in the teacher's lounge at school, her coffee steaming between us, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun. "You're reading into things," she said, stirring sugar into her cup. "You catch him lying, fine, deal with that. But doors rattling? Whispering? That's your brain playing tricks." I didn't argue, but Claire wasn't the one lying awake at 2 a.m, listening to murmurs seeping from behind a locked door. She didn't feel the chill that crept up through the floorboards beneath our bed. The whispering grew sharper after Adolf began taking late-night drives. One night, around midnight, I heard him moving downstairs. He was careful, too careful. His footsteps were placed like he knew I was listening. He kissed me on the forehead before slipping out, his lips cold, his breath smelling faintly metallic, Not of coffee or whiskey, but of something sharper. I waited 5 minutes before I followed. His car rolled down our street, headlights cutting through rain-slicked pavement. I tailed him at a distance, my own wipers screeching against glass, heart hammering like a student caught cheating. He drove past the quiet neighborhoods, past the gas stations closing for the night, out toward the edge of town where houses thinned into dark, overgrown lots. He stopped at the end of Ashbury Lane, where a crumbling Victorian sat swallowed by trees. Its siding sagged, the windows black holes except for one upstairs, glowing with a sickly yellow light. I pulled to the curb, engine idling low, and watched him step inside like he'd been there 100 times. Through the cracked siding I saw her, a woman pale as porcelain, hair dark and damp as seaweed, her eyes fixed on him with something I couldn't name. She laid her hand on his chest like she owned him. And then, though no one had spoken, though I was half a block away in a rain-slick car, she turned her head toward me. Her gaze met mine, and in that instant, I knew she had been waiting for me. I don't remember driving home. My memory cuts like film spliced wrong, headlights flashing, my hand slick on the wheel, my own breath too loud. When I confronted Adolf the next morning, he laughed. Too easily, too rehearsed. You're jealous of shadows now? He asked, sipping his coffee like it was any other day. His shirt was crisp, ironed, no trace of last night's rain. His eyes were steady, too steady, and his laugh didn't sound like his anymore. I described her face, the sharp cheekbones, the white skin, the black hair that dripped through no rain touched it. He shook his head. You've been grading essays too late. You're dreaming awake. That night, the guest room door opened on its own. The smell hit first, rot and wet roses, a stench that clung to my throat. The door swung wide with a groan. Inside, there was no furniture, no dust sheets, no boxes, only piles of ash. Heaped high, scattered like bodies burned down to dust. And Adolf stood behind me, whispering words in a language I didn't know, his smile stretching far too wide. I ran, barefoot, through rain, through mud, through the night that cut my lungs raw. Something scraped my arm, nails dragging as if the wall itself had reached for me. The house groaned behind me, not like timber in a storm, but like something alive, something swallowing him whole. I didn't stop until the lights of Route 302 blazed ahead. I flagged down a car, a stranger's voice shouting questions I couldn't answer. I just kept running. I wish I could tell you I went to the police, that I marched into the station, laid out the story, showed them the scratches on my arm, the ashes in the guest room, the pale woman in the Victorian. But what would I have said? My husband is sleeping with a ghost and the house is alive. They would have filed it under stress, maybe recommended therapy, maybe handed me a pamphlet about domestic disputes. So instead, I left. I checked into a cheap motel off the interstate, paying cash, giving a false last name. The air conditioner rattled like teeth in the wall. The carpet was stiff with decades of wear, and the mirror above the sink was cracked through the middle. But it was away from the house, away from Adolf, away from the whispers. For the first 2 nights I slept, really slept. No whispers, no scratching, no ash in the sheets. Just the low hum of the ice machine outside and the occasional knock of pipes. I thought maybe I'd escaped. But on the 3rd night, I woke up with the taste of smoke in my mouth. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw the mirror fogged over through the air conditioner still blew cold. A single word traced across the glass, as if written by an unseen finger. Mine. I packed before sunrise. That became my life. Motels under false names, never the same place twice. Portland to Augusta, Augusta to Bangor, Bangor to small towns I'd never heard of. Their motels little more than converted farmhouses. I carried 1 suitcase, my wallet, and a phone I barely turned on. I told Claire I was staying with family out of state. She didn't press, though I could hear the worry in her silence. The scratches on my arm never healed. They scabbed, then split, then wept again, as though something under the skin wanted out. At night I rubbed ointment over them, bandaged them tight, whispered that it was just infection, just flesh. But sometimes, lying on stiff motel sheets. I swore I felt the scrape from inside. And the woman, she followed. The first time was in a gas station bathroom outside Skowhegan. I bent to wash my hands, and when I lifted my head, she was behind me in the cracked mirror. Pale, hair dripping, her lips parted just enough to show teeth that seemed too sharp. I spun around. The stall doors were open, empty. But when I looked back at the mirror, water dripped down the glass as if someone had stepped out of a lake. The second time was worse. I had just fallen asleep in a motel outside Bangor when I woke to the weight of someone sitting on the bed. The mattress dipped, the springs whining low. I kept my eyes shut, every nerve screaming. I told myself not to look, not to give it life. But the air grew wet, heavy with the smell of roses left too long in a vase, blackened at the stems. A whisper brushed my ear. "You saw me." I opened my eyes. No one sat there. But the sheet where the weight had pressed down was damp, darkened with something that smelled like earth after rain. I thought about going back, to the house, to Adolf, to demand answers. But every time I neared Portland, every time I felt the pull of those familiar streets, the scratches on my arm burned like fire, as though warning me, "Don't return." Weeks passed. My reflection grew thinner, hollower, my eyes ringed with shadows I couldn't scrub away. I taught myself to eat on gas station sandwiches, to sleep in bursts between strange noises, to live with the sound of my own pulse louder than any comfort. But I couldn't outrun her. One night in a rundown motel near the coast, I dreamed, or thought I dreamed, of Adolf. He stood in the doorway, smiling wide, his clothes burned to ash, his eyes hollow sockets. He opened his mouth, and the voice that came out wasn't his. It was hers. "The bed is waiting." I woke with my hands clawing the sheets, my throat raw as if I'd been screaming. The mirror above the dresser was no longer cracked. It was whole, and in it, the room looked wrong. Too dark, the wallpaper peeling, ash spilling across the floor. I wasn't in the reflection, but she was. Standing just behind the glass, her hand pressed flat against it, and Adolf was beside her. His arm slung over her shoulder, his smile a stretched wound. I smashed the mirror with the lamp. Shards rained. Across the carpet, my blood mixing with silver edges, but in each shard her eyes still stared, unblinking. I left that night with my hand wrapped in towels, the suitcase half open, clothes spilling in the motel lot. I drove until dawn, until the gas light blinked red, until I couldn't see straight. And now I don't know where I am. Another motel, another town. The curtains drawn, the lights dim, the smell of smoke never leaving. Sometimes I hear Adolf's laugh through the thin walls, though I know the room next to mine is empty. Sometimes I wake to ash on the pillow beside me, indented as though someone had slept there. I tell myself this is paranoia, that grief and betrayal warp the mind, that there is no pale woman, no house alive, no whispers from ash. But every night when I close my eyes, I feel the weight on the bed beside me, the dip in the mattress, the cold breath at my neck. And when I dare look in the mirror, whatever mirror it happens to be, she's always there, waiting, smiling. My husband may be gone, swallowed by that house, but the marriage bed still smolders in my dreams, and I know no matter how far I run, the ash will find me again. I knew about the affair before I ever found proof. My husband's smile had changed, too wide, too polished, the way men smile when they're performing. My name is Rachel Mercer, 36, a marketing coordinator in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I've always prided myself on reading people. But it wasn't until I found the lipstick-stained receipt tucked beneath the visor of his car that dread became solid enough to hold. The paper trembled between my fingers, the red mark smeared across the corner like someone had pressed it there deliberately. A hotel bar, 2 glasses of wine, a room upstairs. I sat behind the steering wheel staring at it until the words blurred, my breath fogging the glass. By the time Owen slid into the driver's seat that evening, joking about traffic, I'd folded it neatly back into place. That was the night the house began to shift. The bedroom walls pulsed faintly after the lights were out. At first I thought it was the heat system, old ducts rattling, but when I pressed my palm to the plaster, I felt warmth seep back into me as if the wall itself exhaled. It throbbed like a muted heartbeat. I drew back quickly, fingers trembling, and spent the next hour scrubbing at a spotless nightstand just to keep my hands busy. In the kitchen, I heard laughter. A woman's voice, sharp, playful, not mine, threaded through the hum of the refrigerator. The sound was so clear I dropped the sponge I was holding. Glass clinked faintly as if two people toasted behind me. I turned, expecting Owen leaning against the counter with that practiced grin. But the room was empty. Only the light above me swayed, slow, deliberate, as though someone had just brushed it on their way out. The next morning, I set out cereal bowls with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Owen padded in, hair damp from the shower. I asked him casually if he'd heard anything strange in the night. He laughed, spoon clattering against ceramic. "You're wound tight, Rach. Maybe take a break from work. You're hearing things." He kissed my cheek, warm, lingering. I sat perfectly still while his lips pressed down, but my whole body leaned away. Later, when he was gone, I stood frozen before the bedroom door for nearly 10 minutes before finally turning the knob. The air inside smelled faintly sweet, a perfume I didn't own. I called my sister that afternoon. Meredith's voice came through the phone, sharp with concern. "Move in with me. You can't keep living there if it's driving you crazy." I promised I'd think about it. That night, I packed a suitcase. As I zipped it, the overhead lamp flickered violently, so bright it left spots burning in my vision, then popped with a hiss. Shards scattered across the floor. My hands dropped the handle immediately. The suitcase slumped, half open, clothes spilling out. In the sudden silence, I swore I felt the house sigh, as though relieved I wasn't leaving. The next day, while collecting mail, Mr. Chandler stopped me at the curb. He was a quiet man, a widower who trimmed his hedges to sharp perfection. His voice was low, hesitant. "I see shadows in your windows," he said, eyes fixed on our second floor. "A man and a woman. Sometimes, more than two." That night, I lay awake watching the water stain on the ceiling. It had started weeks ago as a pale mark, but now it stretched wider, jagged, darkening in ways the roof leak couldn't explain. Under the thin light of the street lamp outside, the shape looked like a gaping mouth. At 3 a.m, I woke to a damp drop splattering against my cheek. Cold seeped down my neck, soaking the pillow. When I tilted my face upward, the stain pulsed as though something pressed from the other side. Desperate to push through, I sat up and scrubbed the ceiling with a rag for hours, though the stain only grew darker, spreading like rot. At 3:14 a.m. exactly, I woke again to weight sliding into the mattress beside me. The sheets lifted. The bed dipped. My first thought was Owen, but his side was empty, cold. My hand pressed against a warm indentation, the precise outline of a body curled toward me. I recoiled, clutching the sheets to my chest, heart slamming. The imprint faded slowly, but the perfume lingered. The next morning, I cornered Owen in the kitchen. My voice cracked. "Who is she?" His face shifted in an instant. First confusion, then something sharp and cruel. His eyes narrowed. "You've always been dramatic," he muttered, spitting the words like venom. The walls groaned as though in response. The ceiling above us cracked with a sound like bones snapping, raining dust into his coffee. From the vent above the sink, a voice hissed. Low, intimate, unmistakably female. "Rachel!" I bolted from the house barefoot, rain soaking my nightgown, the driveway slick beneath me. Behind me, her laughter followed, layered over Owen's, twining together so I couldn't tell them apart. Meredith let me in without questions, her spare room made up with fresh sheets. But comfort didn't follow. The first night, as I lay still, the mattress dipped beside me. Warmth pressed against my hip. I froze, staring into the dark. The impression remained, too defined to dismiss. The next night I woke gasping, clutching at my chest. Something pulsed beneath my ribs, not my heart, but close, deeper. It beat in jagged rhythm, a foreign pulse pressing outward. I pressed my palm hard against my sternum, feeling it throb. The sheets shifted beside me. The warm imprint deepened, and I realized the house hadn't stayed behind. It was inside me now. I told myself I wouldn't sleep again. After that first night in Meredith's spare room, after feeling the pulse under my ribs, I swore I would stay awake until the sun came. I sat upright on the edge of the bed, phone clutched tight in my hand, the pale glow of the screen the only light. But sometime after 3, my eyelids gave out. When I woke, the bed was warm beside me. The pillow had the faintest indent, strands of hair that weren't mine pressed into the fabric. My hand hovered above them, trembling. The color was darker than mine, a sharp black that glistened under the lamplight. I shoved the pillow off the bed, but it landed without a sound, as though the floor had swallowed it whole. Meredith found me scrubbing the wall behind the dresser that morning, my nails chipped raw. I didn't explain. She didn't ask. She only set coffee beside me and said quietly, "Don't let him back in." But Owen was already here. The woman's voice shifted depending on where I was. Alone, it came mocking, lilting through the corners of Meredith's house, riding the hum of the appliances. Poor Rachel. Poor foolish girl. But when Owen called, when his name flashed across my phone, her tone dropped low, intimate, whispering right into my ear. "He's mine. He's always been mine." I stopped answering his calls. That didn't matter. The whispers crawled through vents, seeped from the baseboards, tangled in my hair when I bent close to mirrors. At night, as I lay stiff in Meredith's bed, the second heartbeat pounded under my sternum, harder each time as though trying to break through bone. One night, the stain followed me. Meredith had no leaks, no water damage, but when I woke at 2 in the morning, the ceiling above me sagged with a dark bloom. It spread outward, jagged like veins. I lay perfectly still as a cold drop broke free and splashed against my cheek. I wiped it away, but the dampness clung, seeping down into my collar. I turned onto my side and stared at the hollow beside me. The sheets shifted as though someone was climbing in. The warmth grew unbearable, pressing against me until my own pulse stuttered. Then I heard it. Not laughter this time, not whispers, but the sound of lips parting, a breath sliding against my ear. "Rachel." The voice was mine. I screamed, thrashing, tearing at the sheets. Meredith came running, flinging on the light, finding me curled against the headboard, chest heaving. She tried to hold me, but I shoved her away. My skin crawled where she touched, as though the second heartbeat had recoiled, defending itself. The next day, I went back to the house. I told Meredith I needed closure. She offered to drive me, but I shook my head. Some things you can't share. The key trembled in my hand as I slid it into the lock. The door opened easily, swinging inward as if it had been waiting. The air smelled heavy, metallic, laced with perfume. My suitcase still slumped in the hall, clothes spilling where I'd dropped them weeks before. The stain had spread. From the ceiling down the wall, branching like a dark river, it reached toward the floorboards. When I touched it, the surface throbbed. A cold pulse shot through my palm, straight into my chest, sinking with the second heart beneath my ribs. Owen sat in the living room. Or rather, something wearing his face. His smile was gone, the polish stripped away. He looked hollowed, eyes rimmed with shadows. "You came back," he said, voice cracked. "Who is she?" I whispered, his jaw clenched. The walls groaned. The ceiling above us splintered with a deafening crack. Dust rained down, coating his shoulders. From the vents, her voice slithered out, low and tender. "Rachel?" Owen flinched. His face twisted, not with anger this time, but fear. He opened his mouth, but the words never came. The house roared around us, boards creaking, glass rattling. The air vibrated with her laughter, layered, multiplied, filling every corner until it drowned out my own thoughts. I stumbled backward, clutching my chest. The second heart inside me pounded so hard I doubled over. Cold spread outward from it, into my arms, my throat, my skull. I staggered out into the rain. The driveway slicked beneath me, and didn't stop until Meredith's porch light glowed ahead. Now I stay in her house, but the haunting no longer needs walls. The bed dips nightly. The sheets grow hot beside me. Sometimes I wake to bruises blooming across my ribs in the shape of fingers. Meredith doesn't ask anymore. She knows nothing she says will matter. The second heart beats stronger each day. It isn't abstract anymore. I can feel it, a solid knot lodged just beneath my sternum, pressing upward with every throb. Sometimes it skips, then slams back into rhythm so hard I gasp. When I press my hand to my chest, I feel not one heartbeat but two, colliding, competing. And in the silence between them, I hear her laugh. I don't think of Owen much anymore. Whether he's still in that house or swallowed by it makes no difference. What he brought in has spread, claimed him, claimed me. The betrayal was only the door. Now when I close my eyes, I see the water stain blooming wider, black veins cracking outward, dripping onto my face as I sleep. I taste the damp. I feel her sliding under my skin, and sometimes, when the second heart surges so violently it nearly chokes me, I wonder if she's already there, wearing my voice, wearing my smile, waiting for the moment I go quiet enough for her to climb all the way inside. I knew something was wrong the night he didn't come home. The clock read 2:17 a.m., the kind of hour that doesn't feel real, and the rain outside the apartment windows struck like endless fingertips against glass. The rhythm was strange, too measured, almost deliberate. My name is Lena Rowe, 30, a freelance graphic designer scraping together rent in a small loft on Boylston Street in Boston. For months I told myself the missed calls, the late meetings, the unexplained absences, they were nothing. That marriage was supposed to bend under strain, not break. That love could be stretched without tearing. But when his phone lit up on the kitchen counter that night, buzzing with a name I didn't recognize, the weight of denial became too heavy to carry. The glow of the screen was sharp in the darkened kitchen, cutting across the countertop like a blade. The name was feminine, short, and entirely foreign to me. I didn't touch the phone. My hand hovered over it, trembling as though it might burn. Outside, the rain pressed harder, drowning the city in its insistence. Inside, I listened to silence that was no longer comforting but oppressive. Adrian finally came home at dawn, his hair damp and clinging, his shirt open at the collar as though he had rushed to appear casual. He smelled faintly of perfume, not mine, never mine, something light and floral that clung to him more intimately than I had in weeks. He kissed me hello with practiced ease, the kind of automatic gesture that used to soothe me but now made my stomach twist. "You're awake?" he asked, voice smooth, carrying no hint of guilt. "I couldn't sleep," I said, keeping my face steady. He smiled that familiar smile, the one he wore when caught in half-truths about trivial things. He thought it still worked. Maybe it did, maybe I was the fool for doubting. But some part of me knew then I wasn't alone in this marriage anymore. The unease began small. A sound where no sound should be. A draft where no air should move. Then the voice. At first it was faint, like neighbors talking through the wall. I told myself it was the pipes, the echo of a television somewhere in the building. But the words became clearer, more distinct. A woman's voice, low and melodic, threading itself into the quiet of my apartment. "Lena." I froze at my desk, pen slipping from my hand. The sound had been close, impossibly close, as though spoken directly into my ear. I spun in my chair, but the loft was empty. Shadows stretching long in the weak light. My heart pounded so hard it shook my ribs. The next night it came again. "Lena." Sweet, coaxing, insistent. I told myself I was tired. That freelance deadlines and too many nights staring at screens had fried my nerves. But the sound followed me from room to room, always in the walls, always whispering my name. I invited Maya, my oldest friend, over for wine one Friday evening. Maya was the kind of person who filled a room with laughter, sharp-edged and unapologetic. I didn't tell her everything, not at first, but the second bottle of wine loosened my restraint. I told her about the whispers, about the voice. She laughed, called me paranoid, told me I needed a vacation, but when she pressed her ear to the wall, the laughter drained out of her. Her face paled, lips parting in a silent gasp. "She's saying your name," Maya whispered. My blood went cold. "You heard it?" She backed away quickly, eyes wide. "Yeah, Lena, I swear, she said your name." That night was the beginning of the unraveling. The apartment began to shift, subtly at first, then violently. Cabinets opened with a crash at 3 a.m. Silverware clattered in drawers like teeth chattering. Mirrors fogged with condensation, though the air was still and dry. Adrian noticed, but he hid behind silence. His eyes lingered too long on dark corners, his expression vacant. Once I woke to find him standing in the hallway, his palms flat against the wall, head bowed. His lips moved, whispering words too soft to hear. I crept closer, heart rattling in my chest. "I'll come back," he murmured. "I'll come back, I swear." His voice was pleading, desperate, and it wasn't meant for me. I shook him awake, but he looked through me as though surfacing from a dream. From then on, sleep left me entirely. I drifted through days in a haze of exhaustion, my thoughts fraying. I tried to leave the apartment. God knows I tried. But the locks wouldn't turn. the key stiff and useless in my hand. The air thickened around me, every step dragging like moving through syrup. And when I looked out the windows, I didn't see Boston anymore. I saw rain, endless rain, and a pale figure reflected in the glass. Her face was blurred but feminine, eyes hollow, lips moving in soundless words I almost understood. The sight made bile rise in my throat. When I screamed for Adrian, he only sat on the edge of the bed, vacant, listening to something I couldn't hear. The apartment warped around me. Hallways lengthened, doors multiplied. Each one bore the same brass number, 217. My hand against the wall felt heat, a faint pulse as though the building itself lived and breathed. One night, following the whispers, I entered the bathroom. Water bled from the seams of the tile, dripping steadily onto the floor. The drain gurgled like a throat clearing. The mirror above the sink was fogged, though no steam filled the air. I wiped at the glass with my palm. It wasn't my reflection that stared back. It was hers. Eyes wide, lips stretched into a smile that froze the blood in my veins. She reached through the glass with dripping fingers. I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. Adrian stood there just behind me, whispering a name. Not mine. Hers. I ran barefoot into the hall, pounding on doors that never opened. Each one rattled under my fists. Each hallway stretched longer and longer, every number repeating. 217, 217, 217. The lights flickered once, twice, then extinguished entirely. I was left with nothing but her laughter, echoing in the dark, wrapping itself around me. And now, even far away, I hear her. In cafes and hotel rooms, in the quiet between breaths, a woman's voice seeping through walls calling for me. I don't know if she took Adrian or if he went willingly, but I know the betrayal was never just his. It belonged to the walls, to the thing that wanted me hollowed out, and it waits, patient, whispering my name through the walls wherever I go. I don't know how I found my way back into the apartment that night. My feet were raw, my throat burned from screaming, but somehow I was in bed when morning came. Light filtered pale through the curtains, unkind in its softness, and Adrian was next to me asleep. He looked peaceful, almost boyish, as if none of it had touched him. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, but when I leaned closer, his lips parted and a sound slipped out. Not a snore, a whisper, a woman's name, breathed with a kind of tenderness he hadn't used on me in years. I pulled back so quickly the mattress trembled beneath me. My mouth filled with copper and I realized I'd bitten my tongue. That day I packed a bag. I threw in clothes, my sketchbooks, anything I thought I might need. But when I reached the front door, the key in my hand, the lock resisted. It wasn't jammed. It simply refused. The key turned uselessly, the metal bending slightly in my grip like softened wax. I screamed, pounded on the wood until my fists throbbed. No one came. When I finally turned, the apartment seemed wider. The windows stretched higher. The ceiling rose. My suitcase lay toppled behind me, clothes scattered like entrails across the floor. I sank down, sobbing until my throat went raw. The walls pulsed faintly in and out, as though they breathed with me. Maya called later that afternoon. I tried to tell her what had happened, but my voice shook and I sounded mad even to myself. She insisted on coming over. "I'll stay the night," she said. "You shouldn't be alone." She showed up with her usual fierce energy, clutching a bottle of wine and her overnight bag. But the moment she stepped inside, I saw her shoulders tighten, her smile falter. She glanced at the corners of the ceiling, the shadowed archways, and for the first time I saw fear flash in her eyes. "What's wrong with the air in here?" she asked, voice low. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The silence carried the weight for me. That night we sat on the couch, the bottle between us. She kept laughing, making jokes, trying to force light into the room, but her laughter was hollow, edged with unease. At one point she leaned forward, gripping my wrist. "Lena," she whispered, "it's not just in your head. I hear it, I feel it. This place," she broke off, swallowing hard. "It's wrong," the voice came then. Clear, strong, undeniable, a woman's whisper weaving through the plaster. "Lena." Maya's eyes widened. She grabbed my hand. "Jesus Christ. She's calling you." The air thickened. The light bulbs hummed, flickered. Adrian appeared in the doorway, his face slack, his eyes unfocused. "She's waiting," he said softly. Maya pulled me to my feet. We're leaving now. But the moment we touched the door, the apartment shifted. The hallway beyond was gone, replaced by another stretch of corridor identical, stretching into impossible distance. Every door gleamed with the brass number. 217. Maya cursed under her breath, dragging me back. Adrian didn't move. He stared at the wall, lips parting in reverence. "She's almost here," he murmured. Sleep was impossible. Maya and I sat together on the floor of the living room, the wine bottle empty between us. The shadows on the walls grew darker, sharper until they seemed to move independently. I dozed once, briefly, only to wake with Maya shaking me, her voice urgent. "Lena, look." The mirror across the room had fogged again. Condensation spread outward in slow, deliberate patterns, though no heat filled the air. Words began to trace themselves in the mist. "Come back." Maya gripped my arm until it hurt. "This is insane. We have to break a window. We have to—" Before she could finish, the glass cracked with a sound like a gunshot. The shards trembled but didn't fall, suspended in place. Behind them, a face appeared. The woman. Her smile widened as she pressed her hands against the fractured surface. Maya screamed. She grabbed a lamp and hurled it across the room. The lamp shattered against the mirror, sparks spitting, glass raining across the floor. But when the smoke cleared, the mirror was intact again. The woman's smile hadn't wavered. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching as though entranced. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "She's been here all along," he whispered, waiting. By morning, Maya was gone. Her bag remained, her shoes by the door. But she was nowhere in the apartment. I searched every hallway, every distorted stretch of space, screaming her name until my throat bled. Only silence answered. Adrian sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee as if nothing had happened. "Where is she?" I demanded. He looked up slowly. "Who?" I struck the cup from his hand. It shattered, dark liquid pooling across the floor. My hands shook. "Where is Maya?" He smiled then, calm, unfazed. "She's with her now. That's where you'll go too." The words hit me like a blow. I backed away, trembling, heart slamming against my ribs. The days bled together. Or maybe they weren't days at all. Time dissolved in that place. The clock hands spun without rhythm. Windows showed only endless rain. The whispers grew louder, filling every corner, every breath. Sometimes I caught Adrian standing before the mirror, speaking softly, his hands pressed to the glass. Sometimes I saw shapes moving behind the walls, figures pacing just out of reach, and sometimes I saw her, the woman, pale, hollow-eyed, lips curling in that same knowing smile, always watching me. One night, unable to bear it, I confronted Adrian. "Who is she?" I demanded, voice ragged. "What have you brought here?" He didn't look at me. He stared at the wall as though it were sacred. "She's the one I promised," he whispered. "The one I betrayed for you? And now she wants you." My blood turned to ice. The final night came quietly. No storm, no sudden crash, only silence, deep and waiting. The whispers drew me into the bathroom again. The tiles bled water, the drain gurgled. The mirror fogged. And then her face. This time she wasn't just smiling. She was laughing. Silent, soundless, but her mouth stretched wide with joy. Adrian stood behind me, his reflection clear though mine was gone. He whispered her name again and again, voice trembling with devotion. The glass trembled. Hands emerged, dripping, pale. They reached for me. I stumbled back, but Adrian caught me, holding me firm. His arms weren't tender. They were restraints. "She's here for you," he whispered. The hands closed around my wrists. Cold burned into my skin. The mirror yawned wide, a mouth of glass and shadow. I screamed until my voice shredded. The last thing I saw was Maya, or something that wore her shape, standing behind the woman, smiling with hollow eyes. I woke in a hotel room 3 weeks later, or maybe 3 years. I don't know how I left, or if I truly did. The walls are thin here, papered in faded floral patterns. At night, when the city sleeps, I press my ear to them, and I hear her, Lena, whispering, patient, promising. I don't know if Adrian is gone, if Maya is gone, if I ever left that apartment at all, but I know this. The betrayal was never just his. It belonged to the walls, and wherever I go, they come too. The whisper is with me, always.